So the assistant directors are going to tag team this presentation, and we're going to be going over various protocol procedures. So let's just jump right in. This is the most exciting piece, but it is one of the most important.
Sarah, before you
All
go
right.
forward, are you in like a cave?
What's wrong, Eric?
You just have a lot of reverb.
Oh, I do?
No. Eric, I think it's just you.
Okay. Everyone else can, Jessa, you can hear me fine?
Yeah, but I also have headphones in. Is it just you, Eric? Or?
Eric's super quiet.
Like you can't hear me very well?
No, Eric's quiet.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like it's your technical difficulty, not mine. Okay, I'm going to continue though, so we can get through all of the protocols we're going over. So, all right. So first, I think you probably already know this, but I thought I'd keep it in here so you could see. This is where the emergency protocol lives. This is a place where you can always find it. So if you go to the intranet, if you already have access, then you'll go to emergency response and you will see this various protocol. First, this is the on-call protocol. What you'll notice about this document is that it has the desk procedure, the RA procedure, and the CD procedure. So it actually has perspectives from each staff member. This also has other documents that are important for emergency response that we'll probably touch on throughout the presentation. But you've got your evacuation, so where you would need to go as a checkpoint location, and your shelter in place locations as well. Fire procedures, tornado, bomb threat checklist, all very important items that you can find here. Now, one thing that I have done that has really helped me is I downloaded the PDF of the emergency protocol to my phone. So I have it here. I updated it once it got updated this year, which it is updated. So if you have last year's protocol, please make sure that you have downloaded this year's protocol. There are multiple changes, so make sure that you download the most up-to-date one. All right, so today we're going to go over a variety of protocols. Like I said, we're not touching on every single thing. That would probably take a lot longer than the time that we have allotted. So we are going over a lot of the protocols that are most often seen. And then we will be making sure if you have any questions about anything else, you can ask. And then of course your CDs and ACDs will be able to answer all the other questions. So one of the updates that we have included is a COVID-19 RA on-call protocol. So obviously we're in a pandemic. I think we all know that. And because of that, we have just updated some of the on-call procedures. Pretty straightforward, honestly. The on-call phone, we're asking that it be wiped down when you receive the on-call phone. So the person who drops it off, there are sanitizing wipes at the front desks. There's a sanitizing spray. You can put on a paper towel and then wipe it down. The CDs and the ADs, we've been wiping down our on-call phones as well, and that has helped. Response to calls. Face masks must be worn to all in-person response to emergencies. So obviously, wear a face mask when you're responding. Maintain 6 feet of physical distancing, and then wear gloves when responding to emergencies. So this is a lot different than maybe some of our previous response protocol, but we want you to stay safe. So this is what we're putting in place. This follows the CDC guidelines. We want you to do your best to stay safe. And so that's your priority. Obviously, this has always been the case, but it's even more important now. If you're sick, notify your supervisor immediately so that they can provide appropriate coverage. So I thought this was an appropriate time to provide a content warning. As is with all emergency protocol, it does touch on very sensitive subjects that can be triggering. So this protocol is going to go over topics that include suicide, threat of harm, and sexual misconduct. But first, we're going to talk about tornadoes. So we live in North Texas. We see tornadoes. Those are a thing here. Usually in the fall and the spring. So early fall, late spring is when we most often see tornadoes here in North Texas. Two different things to note about tornadoes. First, there's a tornado watch. That means we're watching for bad weather. That does not necessarily mean that there is a tornado present. That means that the conditions are perfect for a tornado to form. So no alarm would be sounded in that scenario. You'll probably get an alert on your phone. If you have your like news alerts and things like that, you'll get a weather alert, probably if you have any sort of weather app on your phone, if there's a tornado watch. Now, a tornado warning is that there is tornadoes in the area. They have been spotted. So this is when we are warning others to take action. You're going to be notified by an Eagle alert. So if you are unsure if your information is up to date on your MyUNT, this is a good time to make sure that your information is up to date. But I will tell you that the Eagle alert will go everywhere. You'll get it on your phone. You'll get it on an email. It'll flash across front desk computer screens. Room phones, front desk phones, every phone in the building will be going off with an Eagle alert. So that is the time to sound the building's alarm. Like it says, make sure that your information is up to date for Eagle alerts. Eagle alerts are not just for tornadoes, but that is one of the ones that we probably see the most. As you receive the notification of a tornado warning through whatever means, the front desk will sound the tornado alarm. RAs and other similar staff will direct residents to the designated secure locations until the expiration of the tornado warning, and an all clear is given. So a lot of times the all clear will come through the Eagle alert, and you'll know that, hey, there's no more tornado. If you have a hall with a cafeteria, make sure the desk or yourself calls the cafeteria to alert them. With a tornado, the piece that I was just thinking of, where the shelter in place locations are. Those are on the internet, like I said, under the emergency response tab. So you probably have it in your binder. If you don't have it in your binder, you can always find it. It's located online through risk management. Housing residents life staff will use weather reporting resources and/or an updated Eagle alert to determine, to determine a safe and appropriate time to give the all clear. Fire and fire alarm. So tornado and fire, hopefully not on the same day, right? If the building goes into full alarm, evacuate the building, leave, get out. That is your primary concern. You want to get out as quickly and safely as possible. You'll meet at the staff checkpoint location. Again, those locations are listed on that risk management website that is linked under emergency response. The desk will be bringing a black box that has wing rosters and alpha roster, and you'll take the wing rosters to start trying to take attendance of your wing. Try to make note of any missing residents. We will start calling residents to determine where they're at. Maybe they weren't in the building in the first place. You know, they're off campus. They were in a class, whatever. We just want to make sure that we know where they're at. And if we can, we'll call friends. Of course, the CD will be on the scene at that point, assist them as needed. And then you're going to see this over and over and over again. Complete a report as specified on the report flowchart. So if the desk clerk calls you about a fire panel alarm, head to the location indicated by the alarm and check to see if there's actual fire. If there is not a fire, then you're like, no fire here. Inform the front desk of a fire alarm. If the firebox trouble persists, contact the CDOC. If the fire alarm is due to intentional behavior, such as a pulled alarm, tampering with a device, complete a report as specified on the report flowchart. No further action is needed if there's not a fire. If there is a fire, pull the nearest pull station so that you will set the full building into alarm. Go to the step above for building goes into alarm after that. So then you're evacuating the building. And of course, complete a report as specified on the report flow chart. Theft.
Wait, there's a question about tornado in the chat.
I am not because I don't have.
That's okay. I'll read it to you.
Oh, perfect.
So for tornado, we usually had to put everyone in the building on the first floor and it gets super crowded. Are we still going to do that even with COVID?
So right now, the risk that we are mitigating is the risk that is greatest at that point in time. So there is not a better place for everyone to gather in the case of a tornado. We can do our best to make sure everyone spreads out. That is why we're not doing a tornado drill though. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to do something that isn't as necessary, like a drill, but if there is an actual tornado, we have to mitigate the risk that is the most present at that time. So yes, we will be sheltering in place, trying to keep away from any windows or doors or glass so that we are as safe as possible from the tornado.
Right. Awesome, thanks.
Great question though, sorry I missed that.
It was from Austin Ford, so thank you, Austin.
Perfect. All right, theft. You will most likely receive, oh, I saw a typo. You will most likely receive this report from a resident. So encourage them to file the report with UNTPD. If they don't want to file a report, that's okay. You can also offer to call out UNTPD to take the report. The case that I see this most frequently that I can think of is bicycle theft. You know, that's a thing, unfortunately. Call the CDOC and then complete a report as specified on the report flow chart. Unidentified visitor. This is one of the protocols that has been updated. So just pointing that out for any returners. If there is an unidentified visitor, someone that we don't know, you know that you're not sure if they're a resident or not, ask the person who they are. Are they a resident of the building? And what reason they have to be in the building. Obviously, we know what our visitation policy is right now. Nobody that does not live in the residence hall should be there. So the first place, you know, if they're a resident is the reason that they should be there. If the individual is trying to sell, give away, or advertise something, ask them to leave the building. That's called solicitation, and it is prohibited. If they refuse to leave, contact the CDOC. I'm guessing it should say, it says ADOC. If the individual does not have a reason for being in the hall or the reason does not seem legitimate, you can ask them to leave the building. If you do not feel safe ever approaching the individual, make note of their appearance, try to keep track of where they are in the building, contact the CDOC and assist them as needed. So the CDOC will be able to assist in that scenario and then complete a report as specified. Non-compliance. So I think this goes well with an unidentified visitor because we kind of were going over if they refuse to leave. Non-compliance occurs when an individual refused to comply with a reasonable request. You'll hear this over and over again in varying different protocols that could end in non-compliance, right? You have reasonable requests include asking for an ID, asking individuals to leave a common area, requesting that individuals be quiet if it's past quiet hours, asking them to refrain from using profanity or anything that is offensive. As a university official, you have that right to make a reasonable request. So if at any time a non-compliant individual does become violent, then you feel you are in danger, you can call UNTPD. But the best way to diffuse these situations kind of goes back to a little bit of incident confrontation. Calmly state and restate your request. Do not raise your voice or mirror any hostile tones taken by the individual. So you're going to be as calm as possible. If the individual complies, thank them for their compliance. Nothing further is needed, right? Sometimes people just get frustrated. If the individual does not comply, you have stated it as calmly as possible, you've reiterated it, explain that the refusal to comply can constitute noncompliance, which can result in disciplinary action. If a whole group is being noncompliant, pull aside the residents of the room within a resident room or If you know a resident, someone that's the most vocal person of the group, ask them to assist you in getting the group to apply. Explain that residents are responsible for the actions of their guests, which is true. Shouldn't have any guests though, right now. So if they continue to not comply, you would call up to the CDOC and move forward with that. All right, I think that is all that I am covering. Passing it off.
All right, so we're talking about alcohol first. So alcohol in a student room if a student is not present. I know we're not doing safety checks the way we were before, but say you're made aware or you see it in passing for some reason, you find this alcohol in a student room. If they're under 21 and they're not present, you're going to confiscate the alcohol, indicate what you confiscated on the room entry notice form, but it's not a violation if residents are 21. You're going to take the confiscated item to the designated confiscation storage location in your hall, so please make sure that you ask your staff or your CD where that is. Document the specific items that were confiscated, like the type and the number of each item, and then the locations where they were found. And then complete a report. As always, write it up. So if a student room and they are present, you have direct suspicion that violation is taking place. You're gonna knock on the door, you're gonna be observant. These are definitely gonna happen more so when you are maybe walking down the hall, you're doing your community walks, and or you get a complaint or a noise violation. You're gonna go to the room in the area and be like, hey, something's up. You're hearing clinking, you're hearing things that are happening in there. You're gonna knock on the door, be observant, look for signs of alcohol. You can tell the residents that you're there because you believe there's alcohol, you heard the clinking, you heard the shh statements. You need to check to see if everyone's 21. Explain the housing alcohol policy. You're gonna check the IDs, you can verify info on the roster. They really shouldn't be in mass. Remember this, they should not be congregating together, but maybe it's just like 2 roommates, they live together, they're being loud, they're playing video games, and they're just getting a little loud because they don't know how loud they're getting, and they also happen to have alcohol with them. But they're both 21, they're good to go. If they're not 21, we have issues. Keep going down. No IDs. If they don't live there, shouldn't be there anyways, but if they don't have the IDs, they gotta go. They gotta be one of our students. If they refuse to leave, call the CDOC. Again, if everyone's 21, we're all good unless there's other things. Maybe just tell them to quiet down. If they are not 21, you do need to ask them to gather all the alcohol into the center of the room and then have them pour it out. If they are, again, under 21 years old, they have to pour it out themselves and then put all of the items into a trash bag and then escort the students out to dispose of the empty bottles or cans or what have you that they have. Okay, making sure there's no questions in the chat. So for drugs is one of the ones that we did update, mostly in how often we call the police. And when we do call the police, which we'll go over in a second for police and building, we did add another step to when we call the police, we also call a full-time staff member as well. So for drug suspicion, an individual tells you about a smell that indicates the possible presence of drugs. You're gonna go to the general area. You need to identify the room where the smell is coming from. Again, it's not just call the police because you smell it. You have to identify the specific area, whether that be a room or suite of rooms that the smell is coming from before, Logan, I'll get to that question in a second. And then we can call UNTPD. When we call UNTPD, you're gonna call the CDOC right after. The CDOC will come out when the police come out as well. So if an individual tells you of the presence of drugs they have personally seen, so it's a roommate that is, that says, hey, I know my roommate, I'm gonna use Sarah as an example here. I know me and Sarah are rooming in this, we have the same room. Sarah, I know that she's got some stuff in her top right drawer. But I don't want to be the person who narked on my roommate because I got to live with her still for, the next couple of months. I don't want to be mad at me. So if they tell you about the presence of drugs that they've personally seen, they wish to remain anonymous, keep their identity private. Again, we don't offer confidentiality when you're communicating with staff members other than the CD. Notify the CDOC and await further instructions. And they'll tell you kind of what to do after that one. I can't click forward myself. There we go. So if you smell drugs, you have to identify the specific room or suite where the smell is coming from. You do not have to get another student to confirm the smell. If you cannot identify the specific room or suite where the smell is coming from, you're just going to complete a report on the flowchart. You do not have to call UNTPD if you cannot identify the room. Before, for those who are returners, you know that it was, I generally smell it at the end of this hallway. Call PD. No, we're not going to do that. We're trying to limit the amount of time we have to bring other people into the halls and or have unnecessary and undue stress of having PD within the halls if they don't need to be, and our students as well. If you see drugs specifically, this would have been more likely during your safety checks. I know we're not doing those as often in the same manner as we were, but let's say you, again, walk by and you happen to look in and you see things on the desk. Make note of the appearance and location of them. Don't touch anything. Do not confiscate them. Do not even address it. Notify PD and as well as the CDOC. Okay, there are some questions that I'm going to answer about alcohol here. So say you have a roommate. This is from Logan. What if one of the roommate is over 21 and the other roommate is under 21? How would that procedure look? I'm thinking you're talking about confiscation. If it's out in a public space and you're unsure, if you can't discern whose it is, you're still going to confiscate it until both of the residents can say, yep, it's the person who's 21, and it's theirs. And then you remind them, you can't consume in front of somebody who is under the age of 21. So you should be keeping this in a fridge that's not shared, preferably, or a closet, a cabinet, something where it is not exposed and out to somebody who is under 21. This is the tricky part. These are the tricky ones. They're not supposed to be drinking in front of somebody who's under 21 either. I think, Jordan, I think that also answered your question. I believe. If that didn't, and if you want to clarify a little bit more in the chat, please do. Derek kind of answered as well. No alcohol can be present for anyone under 21. Thank you, Derek. For the alcohol we find for under 21 and not present, what if? Okay, Michaela, I'm trying to understand your question.
So like if
Oh, thanks.
one roommate is like present,
Uh-huh.
but in it, like, I know we're not doing room checks, but you see, you know, the not present type of there, and they're like, it's on the roommate that isn't present, it's like their alcohol. And it's like, you know, the roommate that is present claims that it's not theirs, it's on that side of the room, it's not theirs. So would we just act like the not present protocol, or do we, because there is a roommate present and they're both under 21, let's say, and like, would
I mean,
we,
if they're both under 21, you're going to have to, they shouldn't be in there anyways, regardless of whose it is.
do we make the one, even if it's not, it's not on their side of the room, we make them pour it out and stuff like that? So we make it as a present one, a present protocol?
Yeah, and you can, I would suggest in your documentation, and or if you have questions, you can always call up and ask the CDOC to be your support in this one and to make that judgment call in the moment.
Right.
If they're both under 21, we're going to say nobody in this room is supposed to have alcohol to begin with. If it comes into the over 21, under 21 mix, I'll leave that judgment up depending on the situation to the CDOC in the moment. They may call up to the ADOC, so myself, Sarah, Eric, Latoya, or Amanda, to kind of best work through that situation.
Okay.
And it doesn't give you a clear answer on that one because I feel like there's a little bit more nuances to this one, but generally speaking,
it's definitely a what if question.
yeah, for under 21 people, we're going to say you're going to get to dump it no matter what. But in your report, you're going to state, Sarah and I, again, we are roommates. Sarah's present in the room. I am not. She's claiming it's my stuff, not her stuff, even though we probably shared it because they were roommates and that we're both under 21. So there's a possibility that Sarah's going to say, nope, that's Jessa's. And Michaela, as the RA, you're going to write it up that says, Resident Rogers stated that this was Resident Mays's item. Resident Rogers still dumped everything because both people are under 21. And you're going to put that in there so that when both of us get a conduct case, you don't have to worry about investigating anything. It's going to be hashed out in the conduct process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, we're gonna go into intoxication. General signs of intoxication are mental confusion, cold and clammy, and unusually pale or bluish skin, unresponsive or unable to be awakened, slow and irregular breathing, meaning that fewer than 8 breaths per minute, or they're vomiting while passed out. If they are vomiting while passed out, please call UNTPD and the CDOC. Medical staff will need to determine if there's a need to be transported. That's not something we're going to ask you to do. Thanks. Oh, that was it. Oh, okay, great. So police and building. Like I said earlier, we did change our police and building, not necessarily the protocol of when they're in the building, but how we respond when they're in the building. So if they're coming in and it's not an emergency, it is UNTPD, not an emergency. All they're doing is doing a walkthrough. They're saying, hey, they may be using the bathroom. They're coming in to get some water because it's really hot outside. They need to refill their reusable cups. It's all good. If it is an emergency, you're going to go ahead and follow whatever other protocol needs to happen. So you're going to assist the officers needed. You're going to be able to give them the following information on this number 2 here. You can give them a room number for UNTPD only. You can give them a student ID number. You can give them the names of the residents in the specific room. You can give cell phone numbers that are listed on the rosters, emergency contact information if necessary. If they need other things beyond that list, you're going to contact the CDOC as either way, because they're coming into the building, the CDOC needs to know. Okay. If for some reason an officer needs access to a room and is a UNTPD officer, if they are, and they need to go in there, you're gonna go ahead and unlock it as requested. Please, again, make sure the CDOC has been contacted. They should be on their way during this process if they aren't already there. You cannot give them a key, but you can unlock a room for a UNTPD officer. Is that it? That's it for me. I'm sorry, there's a question. These are not, if a resident is drunk, clearly, and we see them struggling to even walk, can we help them at least to sit down or to their room? How are situations like that supposed to be handled? Just wondering. That's a great question, Mashreek. If a student is clearly unable to walk, regardless of the reason, helping them to the nearest seat, I don't think is an issue to help them sit down. I would suggest not taking them to their room if they cannot get there themselves. And that's mostly to not put us in a liability state of something happening between camera come the front door to whenever they get to their room and something happening there. I would suggest getting them in the lobby if they can just sit for a little bit to get them medical attention, not just intoxication, but in any situation. Maybe they're maybe there's a headache, a migraine, something that happened. Maybe they fell and they hurt their leg or something. We don't want to continue to put them in the situation. We want to keep them and just sit so we can get the medical attention if necessary. Okay, I see something from Hannah. Someone is intoxicated and passed out. Can we do the emergency, turn them on their side, et cetera, after we call 911 to the CDOC? If you call 911 and you give them all the symptoms of what's going on, and then the operator or the dispatcher tells you to do specific things, you are allowed to follow what the dispatcher says. So if the dispatcher says, turn them on their side, you can do that. Again, and also what I'm going over in this PowerPoint, what we're going over in this PowerPoint is a very abridged version of the full protocol. This is general things. Please look at the protocol that says for RAs what they can do. They'll give you more steps in the full document. This is an abridged, very shortened version of what you should be doing, but there will be even more processes, more steps in the protocol that's online. Okay, I think Amanda's up next.
I am. All right, so we are going to talk about student of concern / crisis. So as the RA, if you encounter a student in crisis, you're going to ask the resident to tell you what's going on and gather as much information as possible. So find out as much as you can. There are some suggested questions in the protocol that you can find on the internet that Sarah showed you earlier, where all that stuff is. Let them know about any of the resources we have on campus. Ask them if they would like to talk to the CD on call. And then also when you get your QPR training, this is something else they'll kind of walk you through, is you're going to ask them questions about, are they thinking about committing suicide? Are they having thoughts of harming others? Next. Don't leave them alone. Find another staff member to stay with the resident if you need to leave at some point. So, for example, if you have them in the lobby, or the resident sends you a message in Teams and needs to talk to you, but you need to go get some help. This is why Teams is super important, and you can send a message to your other RA buddies in the building to ask if someone can kind of help you with the situation. But please don't put yourself or other staff members in harm's way, or risk for being in a harm's way by staying with the resident, especially if the resident is violent or could hurt you due to the intent of self-harm. Call the CDOC. Even if the resident calms down, you still need to call the CDOC. Let the CDOC know if the resident requested to talk to them or not. If the resident leaves before the CDOC arrives, make sure you call UNTPD. Don't attempt to restrain any of the students. Don't attempt to stop them from leaving, but pay attention to where they go. So that way you can give a direction and a description of what's going on, so that the CD and UNTPD can also help in the situation. And then assist the CDOC as instructed, and then you'll complete a report as specified in the report flowchart. So for students of concerns or crisis, this would go under the care team referral. If there is other stuff that happens that's non-care team, you would also need to file an incident report for that stuff. All right. If you are informed about a student in crisis from another source, which mainly we get from Facebook, or someone sends a message to one of their other friends and then they forward that on to you as the RA, and the resident might not even be your resident, but the person who's telling you about it is your resident. Gather as much information as possible from the individual. Use the suggested questions to gather appropriate information, like what did the student exactly say. If they have the text message or the tweet or whatever it is that they sent, or a screenshot, have them share that with you. Ask the student if it's ever happened again. Have they ever talked like this before to you? Have they ever posted something like this? And then let whoever gives you this information know that someone will be following up with them in regards to what we're able to follow up with them on. Okay. If the student is not in crisis, find out if the resident will be contacting any of the campus resources to assist them. So once you give them all that information, talk them through, like, are you going to call in the morning? Do you want me to help you call in the morning? Contact the CD of the building about offering to walk the student to the campus resource. So counseling center, DOS the next day. So sometimes, for example, this might be something that the CDOC, when they're working with you, will ask you, will send an email to the CD of the building and say that, Sarah would like to be walked over in the morning. I can do it, or you can do it. Let's discuss how you guys want to handle that. And then complete a report as specified. And then suicide threats and attempts. So if there's a threat of suicide, gather as much information. Again, a lot of this with student crisis and concern is you're gathering a lot of information so that the CDOC, the counselor on call, UNTPD, the AD on call, any of us who get called can help you through that process. Find out the resident's name and where they live. If the threat is made during a phone call, find out where they are and write down the phone number from the caller ID from the desk or whoever it is that ends up calling you. If the resident leaves the area, pay attention again so you can give a physical description and a direction of where they went. Do not attempt to restrain them. Again, don't leave the resident alone, but please don't put yourself in harm's way or another staff member in harm's way by staying with the resident if that is not ideal. Call the CDOC and assist the CDOC as necessary, and then complete a report. Suicide attempt. Call 911 if the desk clerk has not already called 911. And we do have a death of student page that if the student is dead, that we refer to. Don't leave the resident alone. Find another RA or staff member, stay with them if you need to leave. Call the CDOC, trying to calm anyone who is present, and get staff members to help remove onlookers from the area. Okay. Gather information about the situation. If a friend or roommate is present, do they know what happened? Did the resident take something? If so, what was it? Is there a note? And assist UNTPD and the CD on call as needed. So some of the stuff in the previous bullet points you're gonna do most likely before the CD gets there. So you and your colleagues that are helping you might be doing that stuff together. And then you'll be able to provide that information to UNTPD and the CD on call. And then it's important that the resident's confidentiality is respected. If asked about the situation, i.e. with onlookers or people who see the ambulance or the police coming in and out of the building, we just let them know that we're dealing with the situation and that it's being handled by staff. And then you would complete a report as instructed. Eric.
I'm here. Sorry, working desk is fun. Okay, so we're in verbal fights and attacks. So a couple of things to keep in mind with a couple of things, the verbal fights and the physical stuff. Always keep your voice low. It's very easy to respond to situations with the intensity that somebody's giving to you and that sort of things. So remember to keep your voice low so we can do that. Do not touch the participants. This specifically goes to if you think people are about to come to fisticuffs, you don't want to get in the middle of that. And then that goes to the third one. Don't put yourself in danger. Sometimes for some of us, I did a hand raising activity when we were training with the CDs on this. So just personally asking you, if you are a person that has physically broken up a fight in the past before your RA role, don't do that while you're in the RA role. It's just a thing that we don't want you to do or put yourself in danger of. Next slide, please. Okay, so at the desk, what they're gonna do is contact the RAOC. They're gonna try to be calm and separate the participants if possible, and then complete a report as specified in our flow chart. So really it's just calm and then trying to, from behind the desk, asking people to separate and that sort of thing. Next slide, please. Okay, so as an RA, you're gonna be calm and separate the participants with your words and like motioning like, hey, can you go over to this side? Can you go over to this side? That sort of thing. Then you're gonna ask each person's side of the story, what happened, how they got to this point, what's going on, that sort of thing. If you can, bring the participants together and have them talk through the problem with you as a mediator, remaining like calm, unbiased, that sort of thing. Then at the end of it, if you can, get a verbal commitment from each person that the fight is over. If you cannot de-escalate the situation or feel uncomfortable leaving the residence in close proximity, please call your CDOC in that situation. And then after we get to that point, whether it's either the fight is over or you had to contact the CDOC, complete your report as specified in the flow chart. So question in the chat from Mushvik. So if I'm seeing a res student get walloped, do I just watch? Yes, and you call UNTPD. And try to be as observant, and even if you have your phone out, possibly taking photo, video of the action happening. That's what we have to do. So, okay, moving on. Weapons. So we have kind of a definition here. Examples would be non-lethal recreational stuff. So this might include a paintball gun, AKA a marker, a water gun, a BB gun, airsoft gun, fencing, foil, etc. Some of those things can be very akin in style and shape to the lethal weapon. So regardless, just be mindful of how you see them. So lethal weapon is a firearm, bows and arrows, crossbow, non-cutlery knife, with a blade longer than 5.5 inches. Mo will actually be talking about that later on in the slide. And then also going along, can you go backward? In the non-lethal area, there's also some other things, you know, that you might want to have conversations with people about that they shouldn't have. Like if, say, a person is on the fencing team, they should not have their fencing foils in the residence hall, that sort of stuff. They should be either locking them up in their team's facility or in a space. So, going to the next slide. Okay, so if you see a non-lethal recreational weapon, AKA a paintball gun, all the lists that we just said, if the individual is in the possession of the weapon at the time, stop and tell them that weapons are not allowed in the residence hall and explain that according to housing policy, recreational weapons are still considered weapons and therefore not allowed. So they, at that point, they can turn around and just, you know, go out the space, or if possible, confiscate the weapon and take it to the designated confiscation storage area for your hall. If a non-lethal recreational weapon is found in a residence room and they are not present, confiscate the weapon and indicate the confiscation on a room entry notice. If you cannot confiscate the weapon, please page the CDOC. Complete a report afterwards so that we can track down and see what's going on with that resident. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're on to lethal weapons in the room. So lethal weapon ammunition found in a resident room. So this is a firearm, bow and arrows, crossbow, non-color knife, all that stuff that we mentioned previously. You need to leave the room immediately, okay? And then you need to notify authorities. So if you found a firearm or ammunition, you need to call UNTPD at 3003. And then after you've let them know, then you need to contact the CDOC. This is one of the times where we do want PD in the space as quickly as we possibly can. So if you found any other lethal weapon, you need to contact the CDOC right then and there. As like literally as you are exiting out of the space. So go from there. So I need you to complete a report as specified in the flowchart after that. Okay. Let's see. So I'm getting some questions in the chat. Yes, Hannah from Rollins, if you see a resident whip out a bow and arrow, there will be a lot of questions. The first one will be, why do you have a bow and arrow? That's not allowed. But yeah, a lot of other questions. And then, so Moosh and Mo, you both have some questions about if residents get violent with you. That is a very, very small chance. I will tell you in my entire 15 years experience, I've never had an RA get attacked by others. I know other professional staff members have different stories, but it's very minor. Now, mind you, what we would do, like in the protocol, and I would encourage all of you to look at that, is basically, we're not telling you how to respond in that situation other than if you're following your protocol and trying to calm things down and that sort of thing. But if you do get assaulted, we need somebody to contact another RA, another CD, another that sort of thing, because they are the people that are going to have to respond to it after the situation, because then you become essentially a person that's active in that incident. So yeah. Okay, so now we're on to sexual misconduct. We're going to move from there. So your procedure as an RA, you need to tell the residents that you are there to help and offer support, okay? If necessary, ask other residents to leave the area, okay? We don't, sometimes with sexual misconduct reporting and that sort of thing, the situation can come at any time. And if you want to ask any of your veteran RA staff members and that sort of thing, they can vouch me on this. Like, it can come in a private conversation. It can literally come up if somebody was just sitting at a desk. It can come up at any time. So that's the thing, is you might want to ask people to leave the area if there's more than one resident that's there. The resident may have a preference of speaking to a staff member of a specific gender or sex. You need to take steps to accommodate that accordingly. So I am a person that identifies as male. And so if somebody says to me and I'm responding to the situation that they would prefer to speak to a female, I need to work on getting a staff member that can do that, whether that's the CD on call or another RA, that sort of thing. We need to try to accommodate that as best we possibly can. Then inform the resident, if you are continuing on the conversation, that you will be contacting the CDOC without any identifying names at that point. Next slide, please. Okay, so then you're going to inform the resident that you will be submitting a report to the Dean of Student Staff, and that you are required to make the names of situations. Hold on one second, y'all.
Do you have a push pin or a thumbnail?
No. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully we don't get a lot of those. Working the desk is fun. Okay, so if the resident wishes to remain anonymous for the reporting purposes, let them know that you are required to make a report to the Dean of Students Staff. Otherwise, then you'll go to step 6. So this can basically have a lot of situations that happen after you inform a student of that, right? That you have to report. So the student can basically say, nope, I don't want to speak to you. Let the student know that you're still going to file a report and that the student will be contacted by somebody from the Dean of Students office, likely the survivor advocate. You all had a session earlier with Esther and that sort of thing. So her or one of her GA or staff are going to reach out. No. So then we need to provide the resident information on other offices and offer support, including, again, the survivor advocate. We really need to let them know that we have that office on campus. Kind of what Esther was saying, that sometimes people don't know about that office unless they're in the need of that office. So there is an entire brochure that we have on that link, and it's also on the internet and that sort of thing for you. Then you need to contact the CDOC and provide the details without any identifying names. We obviously, during these situations, want to keep the information as private as we possibly can. Notice how I said private, not confidential, okay? So the CDOC may ask you to submit more documentation based on the details of the sexual misconduct that was reported to you. We have a list on both ends, both the CDOC and the ADOC, of just certain questions that we're going to ask you if the person divulged them. But I want you to be able to be comfortable saying, no, they did not inform me of that. Because you all are not investigators of sexual misconduct and assault, okay? You are there to help and support the person as they're there. So when we ask those questions, it's basically just to trigger certain things on our end, on resources that we can provide and not provide, that sort of thing. And then know that the Dean of Students office may contact you for further information. So if this happens later in the evening, it may be one of those situations where the next morning you get a contact from Esther or DOS themselves just asking about it. So at that point, you want to skip to step 11. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is basically saying the person, after you said, yes, I'm going to have to report this, and their person's like, okay, I'm still cool with that. Let's go forward. At this point, you're going to listen to the resident. But you need to be listening with the intent of these several questions below, okay? Keep in mind the who, the what, the where, the why, and the how for the report later on. If you are a person kind of like myself that you get so caught up in care of people that you might forget details, this might be one of those situations where you want to keep a little tiny notepad just to write down the information for your report later, okay? Again, you're not interviewing the resident. You need to be documenting what you're told and what you saw and that sort of thing, but you are not driving the resident to another location, interviewing others. You're not doing any of that like process, that sort of thing. You are literally there just to help them and get them connected to the resources that they can. Next slide. Okay, so then at 7, you're going to call the CDOC and inform them of the incident without the names or identity. The CDOC is going to come to the hall and wait with the resident, and you should be waiting with the resident until the CDOC arrives. The CDOC may ask you to submit more documentation based on the details of the sexual misconduct. And then the CDOC may ask you to do a couple of other details or asking information. So you just need to assist them as best you possibly can. And then on the back end of that, complete the sexual misconduct report as specified in the flow chart. Next slide, please. Okay, so big takeaway from this is call up, 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 call up. With this type of situation, over communication is all right, especially within the first 6 to 8 weeks of situations. And then you want to close the loop and make sure that everything is taken care of, both from your reporting end and that sort of thing. Next slide. That's it. One thing with the sexual misconduct report that it doesn't state in there is that with some students may prefer to not speak to you, but they may prefer to speak with a CD staff member, just because there's a little bit of perceived sense of authority there, and what they can do to help versus what you can do to help. So we need to be asking them that, like, if as we're going through the process and if they want to. So when the CD gets to the building, they're either going to be there to assist you and help you out, or they can possibly be that person that tags in into the situation to help out that student and that sort of thing, if the student wants it. And that's the big thing, if the student wants it. Cool.
We're open to questions. I do want to reiterate what Jessica said earlier, that this is just an overview. I took the more common things that you might encounter, and that's what we went over today. The emergency protocol is lengthy. It covers just about, all of the situations that we encounter. Now, there are times that you might encounter something that is not listed in the emergency protocol. And what should you do? Anyone?
Call up.
No, pop quiz.
Yeah.
Other people. Eric?
Yes. Good job.
Thank you, Westall. Thank you. Kobe said call up. Mushi said ask CD, call up. I appreciate y'all.
Yes, the emergency protocol does cover all of the information that we went over, but it includes more. That's what I was getting at. So there's a lot of different scenarios in there that we didn't get a chance to touch on today. So always check your emergency protocol. This is something that, like I said, I download it to my phone. You can do the same if you want. You don't have to. You can pull it up on your phone. Marisol kind of walked you all through that.
You can also put it into your Teams drive. So if you don't want to have it directly on your phone, you can have it on a Teams. If you have Teams on your phone, you can put it in an email that you can find the attachment for. You can put it in a lot of different places. Also, yes, the protocol covers a lot of situations. The protocol does not cover every single what if, every single possibility, every single, oh my goodness, this happened, a very unique situation. Protocol is going to cover a good amount of situations that we've dealt with before. And if you have questions, obviously call up. That's the answer that we're going to say for everything. Call up, ask your questions. If you're unsure what to do, say, I think it follows this one, but it might follow this one. Call your CD. You will never be alone on this. You will never be on call by yourself. CDs call us. We call Tomas and or Gina. There's always somebody that we're going to be able to call. If you can't get a hold of the CDOC for your area, there's another one on call. Neither one of them answer, call the ADOC. You have those numbers. Please call CDs first before you call ADs, because then we're going to get onto the CDs as to why they didn't answer. So call them first. But make sure that you continue to call. If you need to talk to somebody, call. If you have a question, call. Please do. There was a question. So Mushfiq asked a question to Eric directly about specific questions to ask for somebody who is a survival of sexual assault. I understand. The question is, UNTPD previously is what Mush is talking about. Previously, UNTPD has asked us to be very detailed in terms of what happened to a student. That includes touching, fondling, penetration, touching, anything. They've asked us to be very detailed. They don't need to ask that question. You do not have to specifically ask what happened? You're not investigating. If they tell you this information, if you just say the words, what happened? And they go into graphic detail, I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but if they're willing to tell you, just write it down. You do not have to investigate though. You do not have to ask them super uncomfortable questions. You do not have to ask them, okay, well, did this happen? And then did this happen? And did that? And what about that? No, you just ask what happened and they'll tell you what they want to tell you. If there's more information that is needed for whatever reason after you call up to your supervisor, to the CDOC, we'll let you know. But generally speaking, no, you do not have to ask them for specifics. You don't have to ask them if they were touched in specific places. You just let them tell their story as best as they can, with as much detail as they want to give. They're going to have to tell this story eventually to somebody, and we do not want to re-victimize any one person. I hope that helps clarify a little bit. Thank you so much for asking that question. It's a great question. And that one and student in crisis, it's not easy. It's never easy to be a part of, to hear, to listen to. Know that all of these things are not easy. But we have a lot of counseling services. We have a lot of resources for not our residents, but for you as well. And if you ever need support and you're like, I cannot take this conversation, you can call the CD, you can call another RA to say, hey, can you come be this person? Can you talk to this person? They don't feel comfortable talking to me. What other questions do y'all have?
This is your time to ask any questions that you want us to answer about emergency protocol.
I would like to ask some clarification on
Go ahead.
additional non-lethal weapons.
Yeah.
So from our observation, a non-lethal weapon, but it is not really a weapon, it may look like it, are rifles and sabers that color guard will use. Those will always be taped up. The rifles are wooden and are white. The sabers may be exposed metal, but they're not sharp. And is taped and is also generally taped with a white, like cushiony material. So if you see them, I mean, that's what they're there for. They're non-lethal weapons, but they look like it.
Thank you for that clarification, Quentin.
Any other questions that you have that's related or non-related? I don't know. You've got us live, at your, okay. All right. Well, if nobody has any other, wait, I just saw something pop up. How's your day? Today is going all right. Thank you very much for asking.
All right.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good afternoon. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Here, hold on just a Sarah.
Oh, I just saw it. Question.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
What would a blade under 5.5 inches constitute? Usually what you're gonna use is like cooking knives. So, or even actually like a pocket knife is under 5.5 inches. So people are allowed to carry pocket knives. They're not allowed to carry machetes. So thinking of it as, does pro staff eat Bruce too, or have we been eating at Bruce? Yes. Yes, we have been eating at Bruce was the other question. All righty. Thank you guys. Have a good one.